Hi everyone, great to have you all with us today. I'm Callum, I'm the Head of Analytics here at Focaldata, and I'm going to take you through the main part of today's session, our new product launch, and show you how these tools can transform the way you test, analyze, and communicate insights. Hopefully the webinar will take kind of 40 minutes, 45 minutes, with some time for any questions if anyone has any, and then it'll be recorded so you can view it afterwards as well. So this October, we're launching 3 new tools on the Focaldata platform: MaxDiff, Conjoint, and Text Highlight. They're all available to both self-serve and full-service users, and together they represent a big step forward for how teams can use Focaldata, not just to collect data faster, but to really understand why people make the choices that they do. If you've been following our work, you'll know we've spent the last few years helping hundreds of teams, from major brands to political campaigns, get from raw data to strategic insight. But there's always been a missing piece: understanding preferences and trade-offs at scale. That's where Conjoint and MaxDiff come in. They're built for when you want to go beyond what people say they like and uncover what actually drives their choices. With Conjoint, you can test multi-attribute concepts such as policies, creative routes, pricing strategies, and even full manifesto platforms, and quantify exactly which elements matter most. With MaxDiff, you can take a long list of messages, claims, or features and efficiently rank them by what resonates most strongly with your audience. And then there's Text Highlight, our new qualitative analysis tool that lets you capture and quantify emotional reactions to copy, creative, or visual content. It bridges the gap between qual and quant so you can see both what people respond to and why in one place. Together, these 3 tools form the foundation of a much more powerful testing and analysis workflow. And over the next half hour or so, we'll cover 4 key areas. First, when to use each tool, how to decide between Conjoint and MaxDiff for different use cases like ad testing, creative evaluation, or manifesto analysis. Second, how to sequence these tools strategically across your research lifecycle, for example, starting with exploratory Text Highlight, then validating with MaxDiff, and finishing off with high-stakes Conjoint to model audience trade-offs. Third, we want to show you how to analyze and present your results. We'll show you how to turn what can be quite technical data into clear, intuitive outputs that resonate with even your most skeptical or time-poor stakeholders. And finally, how to get started, including a short walkthrough of how to set up your own MaxDiff, Conjoint, or Text Highlight project directly on the platform. To make this practical, we're going to walk through a real-life example. We'll be working from a brief that mirrors what many of you deal with day to day, evaluating campaign messages across multiple markets and identifying which ones cut through most effectively. We'll show you how to frame a question design, how to set up and field the survey directly within Focaldata, and how to interpret the outputs, including part-worth utilities, preference shares, and high-impact message maps. By the end of the session, you should have a clear picture, not just of what these tools do, but how to use them to make sharper, faster decisions. Before we jump in, I just want to say a quick word about how this fits into Focaldata's broader vision. Our goal has always been to make advanced research methods, the kind usually locked up in specialist consultancies, accessible to anyone with a strategic question to answer. These tools are designed to take the complexity out of advanced analytics while keeping the methodological integrity intact. So whether you're an insight lead testing creative, a campaign strategist refining a policy officer, or a brand team trying to decide between competing propositions, you can now do that at scale across 120 markets directly from your Focaldata dashboard. So with that training in place, let's get into it. We'll start by walking through a few slides that show the logic behind each tool. Then we'll move into a live demo on the platform for each of these tools to show you exactly how it works. We'll start with Conjoint and why it's such a powerful tool to model real-world choice. And for that, I'll hand over to my colleague, James.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. As Callum said, I'm going to talk you through Conjoint experiments. So the main kind of benefit of the Conjoint is it allows us to test different combinations to find out exactly what makes a message persuasive. So whenever you have a campaign, obviously it has different elements. It has who the messenger is, obviously it has the message, what you want people to do, as well as other elements possibly as well. But the thing is, though, if you look at all the different ways this could happen, the combinations between the different possible spokespeople, the different possible messages, it combines up to possibly many hundreds, possibly thousands. So what the conjoint does is it randomizes all the different combinations of these to present respondents with 2 or more possible options. And then the question is usually, okay, based on these 2, who would you do you find more persuasive? What would make you do something? What would make you more likely to vote for a candidate, or any other question that you'd like? So first of all, we specify all the different types of spokespeople that you want, the different narratives that you've created, the different call to actions, or anything else. And then we have respondents, they're randomized, different 2 or more, and they get to select which is the best. So this can be used in many different ways. First of all, message testing, especially in the kind of early stages when you're kind of coming up with what is the best possible combination of words, or what specifically about the message is more persuasive. Again, also with designing manifestos and policy packages, you can think of it as candidate A and candidate B. Each one has this is what their tax policy is, this is what their immigration policy is, this is what their climate change policy is, with each candidate having a different policy within that. And then, it kind of sort of simulates a real world environment where then the respondent as a potential voter gets to say, oh, actually, I prefer this candidate over that candidate. And the kind of the causal analysis of this is all about what trade-offs do people make when deciding which they prefer. So if you think about it, you might have 2 options. Option 1 might have things that people like, but then option 2 might also have things people like. So the decision that people make in terms of which to choose shows what is their priority within this. What are the trade-offs they're making between things that maybe option 1 has things they like and dislike, option 2 has things they like and dislike. Which of those outweighs the other? In order to show this, I'll give you a quick demo of what this looks like for respondents on our platform. So the example I'm going to go through here is around a net zero campaign. And we're getting at which is the more persuasive to the respondent. So I'll talk you through a kind of a basic example for now, just to get the intuition behind the conjoint experiment. So first of all, we get respondents to imagine a situation where, this is a message from a campaign trying to achieve net zero. But then obviously you can communicate this in different ways. So we ask respondents which of these 2 options is most persuasive to you. So as you can see, the 4 different aspects we have here is we have a different spokesperson, we have the different narrative that a campaign is focusing on, the scope, the kind of geographic scope, and then also a call to action. What do people want the person reading this to do afterwards? So if you see here, okay, so option 1 has a spokesperson as an economist, option 2 has a spokesperson of a scientist. You can see here that the narrative in both is the same. That sometimes happens in the conjoint experiments, but again, it's to look at, because it's randomized, sometimes this will happen, but that's okay because people are going to see 5 different options where there will be different ways to decide. So, if I'm a respondent here, I might think, oh, I like, economists, but then do I trust a scientist more for climate change? Okay, but call to action is making me want to sign a petition or share online. Which of those do I find, which of those are more persuasive? So I might say, okay, this one because it's a scientist saying it, and I trust scientists on net zero. So I click next, and then I get 2 new options. So this time the spokesperson on option 1 is a politician. The narrative is a health focus, but with a more local scope, and they're saying, please share something online. And again, you can read option 2 as well. But this one I might think, oh, a politician, well, I don't really trust politicians, but the scope is local. So maybe, it's the local MP saying, okay, we've got this local campaign. So maybe that would, the interaction between the spokesperson and the scope could increase people's persuasiveness. Versus, an economist talking about the local region, but the economist is talking about the economy. So maybe I think, okay, it's an economist talking about the economy. That's what's persuading me. And again, we can go through different options here. And people can get 5, we have 5 here, but that can be increased. I think at the maximum it's about 12 on the platform. So that was kind of a basic overview of it. But obviously when you're doing this, really, you won't just have, politician or just, economic narrative. We can have an actual narrative here to make it more realistic. So here we test out actual different spokespeople. So if in your campaign, you have a list of people who you want to speak. We can test out which is the best. And again, with a narrative, we can get the specific wordings from you, and we can test which is the most persuasive. And again, changing the scope, the geographic scope, either it's kind of London or it's Spitalfields where we're based, or more kind of national or global. And again, the call to action, not just what the call to action is, but the message that you kind of create in order to get people either to donate or to sign a petition. So again, the same logic behind it is people make those trade-offs. So here, option 2, okay, you have 2 celebrities with the spokespeople. The scope here on the left is around the UK and global initiatives, whereas the second one is around just London. You have one here which is about climate change and net zero. The other one is about clean air. And so again, as a conjoint, you're making the trade-offs here as a respondent. So that's how it looks on our platform. So from that, we're going to generate results, and then we can go over the analysis of it. So first of all, what this is a marginal mean. So essentially, this is how often or what percentage was this selected. So 0.5 is obviously, it's a 50-50 chance of being selected. So you'd say, well, it didn't really have that much of an effect. If it's more than 0.5, so it's more than 50% chance, that means that people were generally selecting it more than they were. If it's below 0.5, that means it's people were not selecting it more often. So if we look at these results here, what this kind of stands out is that the spokesperson is really important. So on both the far left here, politician and celebrity have the lowest scores, so that means that they were selected the least amount of times. On the right-hand side, we have economist and scientist, so they have the highest scores, and that means they were selected the most amount of times. So essentially what this is telling us is that the spokesperson really matters. We talk about scope and narrative, call to action, but what this is saying is that really what's driving people's decisions during this conjoint experiment was who was saying it. So it wasn't just the message that mattered, it was the messenger. But we can go even further than that. So what we can do is we can look at the interaction between message and messenger. So if you look in the top left here, what we see is that when a scientist said something, essentially people always were selecting it in general, regardless of what the narrative was. So this shows that, if you have a scientist spokesperson, generally, that is a good thing if you want people to persuade people on net zero. It gets more interesting here with the economist in the top right. So, an environmental focused, an inequality focused, or an economy focused had positive effects. But as you see with the health, it didn't have a significant effect. So what this is saying is that, yes, in general, an economist spokesperson is good, but if you want them to have a health-focused narrative, actually, then it doesn't have an effect. So again, we're looking at those interactions between, not just looking at it kind of in isolation, but how does the relationship between these two work? Again, in the bottom left, we look at politician. So again, this is, in general, having a politician as a spokesperson is not a good thing because, it has a negative effect. In general, people tend not to select when a politician is talking. But there is a difference here when there's an economy focus. So if a politician is talking about the economy, it doesn't have an effect. It doesn't have a negative effect or a positive effect. So generally, it's not making that much of a difference. But if you have a politician talking about the environment or inequality or health, then it has a negative effect. And it's a similar result there for a celebrity. So again, this is the good thing about the conjoint is it's not just testing different messages or different messengers, you can test that relationship between them. As well as that, you can then look at different demographics. So if there's a particular demographic you're interested in, so for here we have gender, and we're looking at the call to action. So again, in general, what we see is that there aren't that many differences between how men and women reacted to the different call to actions. The one difference is about signing a petition, where we generally see men are just about more significantly likely to want to sign a petition, but that is an insignificant effect for women. Sometimes you get similar results like this. Sometimes it can be quite different. But the point is, if you have a campaign which is generally focused on a particular demographic, it doesn't have to be gender, it could be education or region, then the thing with the conjoint is you can look at, okay, does this message that we want, did this really resonate with our particular target audience, or did it not? And that is another feature that we can have on a conjoint. Okay.
Thanks, James. I'm going to kind of talk through the next technique that we put into the platform, which is MaxDiff. Can you just pop onto the next slide? Cheers. So really, MaxDiff at its heart is about identifying which message is the most persuasive and the least persuasive out of a whole host of ones. So you might, be in a situation where you have a bunch of messages that you've developed with a client, and you then want to go out and you want to test which ones work best with different groups, work best for the population. And MaxDiff is a really good way of doing that because essentially it has the kind of randomization that Conjoint has, but it allows us to test actually written out sentence messages that you might put in a newspaper or release in a press release. And essentially what it is respondents are essentially shown a bunch of random options, and they're asked to select which was best and which was worst. And we cycle through a bunch of subgroups of those messages continuously for maybe 10, 15, 20 rounds. And then from that, we can deduce the ranking of 50, 60, however many options, because we've tested subsamples of them and then ranked them and then combined all that data together. So it's a really efficient way and a really gold standard way to test multiple messages very, very quickly. The kind of use cases that we tend to use this for, like I say, kind of message testing from kind of a short list that might have come from a client or come from a body or whoever. We sometimes do it with policy testing as well. So we try and kind of figure out which policies people prefer over other policies, what trade-offs people are willing to make in order to have a policy. And then we can go one step further and do what we kind of call meta-regression analysis, which is where we assign each of these messages meta variables like the tone, the sentiment, those kinds of things, and then run a regression model on the results. And that allows us to figure out what combinations of these things make the message more or less powerful. And that's kind of a bit distinct from Conjoint because what we're simulating here is fully written out messages that aren't broken up. We're really kind of like putting it all together. So it can be a little bit, difficult to tease those things out sometimes, but we have a methodology to do that now. I'm going to quickly talk you through how to set this up in the platform, then kind of show you what respondents see, and then I'll show you through some of the results. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can I just... You can just stop. Great. And then if I just show, and then jump onto here. So hopefully everyone can see this. So essentially in the platform, we pose the question, which do you find most and least convincing, or which one do you find most and least persuasive, which one do you like the most, which one do you like best, whatever metric you want to make this judgment on. And then we can pop in what the labels are for each of those. So essentially, that'll be what's shown, and I'll kind of show you on the platform what that looks like, but that'll be what's shown on the labels. And then you just put in what your narratives are. So here I've kind of done a bit of a kind of net zero messaging, which is kind of like, different messages that we could put out in local communities if we wanted to start building new net zero projects. So, the authoritarian regime argument after the kind of Russian-Ukraine war, or about jobs, or about young people. So we might want to test a whole host of these different narratives. And then the only thing on here that we then need to add is this experimental design, which comes down here. And we at Focaldata can help you do that no matter how complex your messaging system is. That's what we're here for, and we're more than happy to give you advice on how to build that out so that you can get the best out of this tool. But once all this is loaded, essentially participants see something like this. So they can read through each of the arguments, select which is most convincing, select which is least convincing, and then pop on over to the next lot. And then again, they select most and least. And they do this throughout. And what's happening here is they're seeing random combinations of statements, but each participant is going down a different route of random statements. So it means you get a completely randomized set of respondent responses. And the reason that that's really important is because that's what makes this gold standard. It means that there's no possible correlation between different messages being shown together to every respondent. So what that means is we're kind of getting rid of all of that potential interaction between different messages that could happen, and really, really controlling to understand which message works best and which works the worst in different cases. So I'll just go back to slideshow. So what you get out of this essentially is what we call a utility score. And this utility score is essentially the number of times that someone clicked yes, minus the clicked most positive or yes, the best, minus the number of times it was clicked worst or no. And that gives us an overall utility score, which then allows us to rank kind of policy areas. So in this kind of overseas aid example, we can see that the NHS and healthcare is the most important priority for spending, which, given current polling and polling over the last year, kind of not unexpected. But the overseas aid spending is actually really unpopular relative to all of the other things tested, and it's significantly unpopular compared to all of the other areas tested. So we can produce really clear rankings of policies, knowing that we've controlled for any possible interaction between seeing the same statements together because of the randomness in the trials. That means that this is a true ranking of the actual attributes themselves. We can then kind of split that out and look at the different kind of areas that this was in. So we can look at policies instead of just policy areas. So we can look at kind of recruiting more doctors, building more hospitals. And what you can see from this is, number one, which policies are the most popular, but also number two, which areas are the most important at the same time. So this kind of gives us two things for the price of one here. Not only are we able to tell the public, tell clients which policies are the best, but we can tell them which areas they need to focus on. So that's kind of MaxDiff. I'm going to hand over to Lily to talk about the text highlighter.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, and happy to have you all today. So yes, going to talk through the text highlight function, which is kind of the Conjoint and MaxDiff established techniques. People have heard of them in the past, but this is something new and quite unique to us that we've set up. So if I can get the next slide. Perfect. So really what the text highlight feature is a really unique and new and amazing way to be able to test content testing and what works in messages, what doesn't work in messages, what people like and what people don't like. So essentially the way it works, and we'll show you a demo where we put it in the platform and also what it looks like for the respondent as well, is that essentially you can put a piece of content, a paragraph, a couple of sentences in, and then respondents will kind of have up to 4 colors that they can choose from, and the colors might correlate to different things, red being bad, green being good, things like that. And then as they read through the text, they can highlight parts of it and then add comments, whether that be why they like this piece of this phrasing or this word, why they don't like it, what might they find interesting. Really depends on kind of how you set up the colors and what you want that to represent as well. And in terms of how you can use it, like the most kind of obvious way is showing a piece of content and asking people to highlight sections that they like, don't like. But another way to it is also kind of A/B testing, so kind of splitting up respondents in the survey and showing slight different variations of paragraphs, content, messaging, and then looking at the differences between those and how respondents interact differently with different things. So that's kind of the main use cases there. Do you want me to take up the screen, or have you got it in color?
I'll jump off and let you share your screen so that you can show these guys how it works.
Perfect. I don't know if I'm going to be able to share my screen. No, I can't share my screen.
Okay. Let me grab it up for you then.
Perfect.
While we're waiting, I've seen a question in the comments here about conjoint experiment. So the question was, is any kind of significance testing built in? How can we tell the results are meaningful or not due to chance? So just to answer this quickly, when I showed you the results, there was kind of a black dotted vertical line, and generally that's the kind of significance line that we have. So if the bar was on the right-hand side of that, so if there was nothing kind of overlapping with that vertical line, then it's a significant result. If it's to the right-hand side, it's a significant positive result, so people were actively voting for it. If that bar was to the left-hand side and nothing was overlapping the vertical line, then it's a significant negative result. So generally people are voting against it. So that's how we can tell if this is a significant result or not. And then, sorry, just a second question on conjoints was, are there recommended minimum or maximum sample sizes? So obviously, the bigger, the more respondents we have, the better in terms of being able to get significant results. But on the platform, we can ask more questions. So I showed 5 different variations of those 2 sets. But on the platform, we can get it as, I think it's up to 12 or something. So the bigger we have, even if you have a small number of respondents, the more kind of options that people are shown, the more likely it is then to get a significant result. And we can also do something called power analysis to see whether your kind of sample and number of questions is going to generally be enough to get a significant result. So I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. And we've got the screen shared now. So this is sort of what it looks like from the respondent's point of view. So we've got a question kind of at the top saying, we've got some content for you to read. For the words or phrases you agree with, highlight these in green and add a comment Y. For the phrases you disagree with, highlight them in red and then add a comment Y. In this case, we've kind of only gone with two options, but like I said, there are 4, and you can ask people to highlight things for different reasons. I think kind of something that's important when we sort of put this in the platform is reminding respondents not to just highlight the whole thing, because obviously if they highlight the whole sentence and say, oh, I like this whole paragraph you've written here, that's not super useful for us as people trying to analyze the results. But yeah, we're really, in this case, looking for kind of words or phrases. So because Callum's sharing his screen for me, he's going to have to participate in this. But we've got kind of an article here around climate and kind of the positives on it. And as Callum is showing you, he's liked this section of it, so he's highlighted it, selected agree with this, and is now writing a comment as to why he likes that. And then they can continue to go through the rest of the piece of content and highlight things they do or don't like. Adding the comments is an optional feature. You don't need to require respondents to tell why they do and don't like things or why they've highlighted things in a certain way, but generally speaking, I think it's a very useful addition to get people's opinions on why they do and don't do that. So again, we've just got one piece of content here, but as I said before, you can do A/B testing with multiple options and really kind of explore differences and variations in content and different messages and things like that. So in terms of going back to the presentation, what that looks like from an output. So this is an example we've got here where we tested kind of the party leaders' conference speeches and asked people to highlight what they found most compelling out of the speeches. And as you can see, out of kind of all of the speeches, there are a variety of kind of sentences and words that people really resonate when it comes to each of the 4 leaders. So as someone kind of working on their teams and understanding kind of the impact of what's being said, maybe post it, but also kind of before doing their speeches, what's going to work, what they think isn't going to resonate with some people. They're able to sort of see here, like when it comes to Kimmy Van Dock, Britain is stagnating is a really compelling argument for her. Economic decline for Nigel Farage. You can really see what people resonate with and what they don't through doing it and kind of testing it in this way. Of course, this is just showing the results from the compelling part. I'm sure we also asked what they didn't like as well, and that would show kind of a different way of highlighting different words that people didn't like as well. So that's a very quick run through of the text highlighter feature.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lily. I know we've had some questions in the QA already, but if anyone has any more, then please do pop them in there and we'll answer them for you. We'll kind of give kind of 20 or so seconds for anyone to ask any more questions. But I think off the back of this, it's kind of really clear that there are some really exciting developments here that give the opportunity to really test strategies, messages, policies in a way that we haven't been able to in the platform before, but to give insights that are beyond just asking people what they do and don't like. this is these techniques allow us to do really, really true gold standard methodological activities on the platform and give you guys gold standard results. I think we've got some questions.
We do. We've got a question around the open-ends, the whys on the highlighted text and what the analysis looks like. Really, it's just an output of what have people said. So as in kind of free text response options that we normally have in the platform, when you export the data, you get kind of an output like that. That's essentially what you're going to get with that here. There is kind of no further analysis in terms of in kind of the output that you're getting yourself, but of course you can do analysis on this if you need to, and of course if we're running this or you're working with us on this, we can do analysis on those open ends and those whys as well. They sort of sit slightly separate to that kind of output we showed with the words that resonate or kind of are highlighted the most by different people.
Great, thanks. I don't think there are any more questions in the chat. So in that case, I just want to recap everything we've spoken about. First, Conjoint helps understand trade-offs and choice drivers. MaxDiff helps you prioritize messages and features efficiently, and Text Highlight helps you see qualitative reactions at large scale. All three tools are available now on the Focaldata platform for both self-serve and full-service users. If you'd like more detail or you want to see how they can work for your specific use case, please just reach out to your account contact or book a short onboarding session via the link we'll share after the webinar. And I just want to say thank you for joining us, and we're really excited to see what you build with these tools.